Now, I want to take you back to this temple of Ramesses II in Luxor. And I want to focus your attention specifically on this object here. This is called a tekken. Many of us know it by its Greek name, an obelisk. This is a symbol that was created in Kemet, a symbol that was designed to represent the resurrection of Asar. Remember I told you earlier, and you all should be familiar with the story, Asar was murdered and was later resurrected. And so this symbol here, the tekken, came to represent the resurrection of Asar. There were at one time over 1,200 of these structures throughout all of Kemet. Wherever you saw there was at one time 2 of these structures flanking the entrance to this particular temple. Almost every temple had 2 tekkenu. Wherever you see 2 tekkenu standing in tandem with one another, they represent the masculine and feminine complementary aspects of the Creator. All right? But it's important for us to understand that in 1833, after Egypt was then ruled by the Arabs, Muhammad Ali, who the Turkish ruler, Muhammad Ali, who was then the ruler of Egypt, who didn't have any affinity with the culture of the ancient Kemites, saw nothing wrong with giving this other tekken to his good friend, King Louis Philippe of France. Gave it to him as a gift in exchange for a clock, which Muhammad Ali put in his mosque. And the next slide shows you this clock that was given to him by King Louis Philippe, a clock that never worked, all right, stands at the citadel at the Mosque of Muhammad Ali in Cairo. And King Louis Philippe's gift, the next slide, now stands majestically at the Place de la Concorde in Paris, France. Now, understand what this structure is. It is a symbol. It has a variety of meanings, but I want to focus on just one interpretation tonight. It is a symbol which represents the resurrection of Asar, the first story of a resurrected Savior. It is a symbol of an African God. Today, there are probably less than a dozen of these structures in Kemet. The rest have been scattered all over the world. Next slide shows you, yeah, there's one right here in Central Park. That's right. It's growing. And there's a wonderful story. As a matter of fact, the next volume of this series, Exploding the Myths, is going to deal specifically with the European theft of African monuments. It's tentatively called An African-Centered View of Washington, D.C., Masonry in the United States, in which we're going to talk about the European lust for African monuments, their attempt to recreate the essence, the spirit of ancient Kemet in the United States of America. Here is an African tekken that stands in the center of St. Peter's Square in the Vatican. Every Easter Sunday, the next slide, every Easter Sunday as the Pope stands, okay, I don't have it. Every Easter Sunday as the Pope stands on his balcony delivering his Easter sermon, he stands before a 6,000-year-old monument that represents the resurrection of an African God. The Pope knows that. That's why the Pope prays to images of Aset and Heru, the African Madonna and Child. Every time the Pope goes to his homeland in Czeskowa, Poland, he prays at the shrine of the Black Madonna and Child. He knows what the real deal is. African tekkenu in England. Next slide. Everywhere you go, you find African symbols. Here is a symbol. This is in Charlestown, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston. A memorial built to honor the European Americans who died fighting in the Revolutionary War. Now think about this reality. They are fighting the British for the control of the land that they took from the Native Americans. And in honoring their dead, they do not use a British monument or a French monument or a Greek monument. They use an African monument. Why? Because of the secret reverence they have for those things that sprang from the minds of African people. This is an important reality that we have to understand. Next slide, please. Here, all right, my hometown, my current hometown is Washington, D.C. We have a tour, an African-centered tour of Washington that I created back in 1986. And it was a tour that I did. I had just come back from my second trip to Kemet. And I kept, the trip was fresh on my mind. And as I drove around the city of Washington, I kept getting flashbacks to things that I had seen in Kemet. And then, it suddenly dawned upon me that there were a host of objects in Washington, D.C. that were similar to things that I had seen in Kemet. So what I did was to identify a number of these objects and to develop a tour that dealt specifically with the design of Washington, D.C. based upon African concepts of city planning, African concepts of monumental architecture. And so what I want to show you in these next few series of slides is the extent to which those responsible for creating the capital of the United States of America borrowed from your ancestors. Here is, wait, go back, brother, go back. Don't jump in now. This is the Washington Monument, the tallest Tekken in the world. Again, realize that this is a symbol that represents the resurrection of an African god. This symbol is now the symbol for the most powerful nation on the face of this planet. Here you see the reflection of the monument in its reflection pool. And all you have to do is to study the architectural styles developed by our African ancestors to realize that this is nothing but a pale imitation of an African original. The next slide shows you the Apet-i-Sut or Karnak Temple in Kemet, two standing Tekkenu and their reflection in their reflection pool. Every temple in Kemet had Tekkenu. Every temple in Kemet had a sacred lake. So you can begin to see where these ideas came from and how they influenced your European masters. Next slide. Here's a photograph that I ran across a couple of years ago.
As we've already noted, symbolism was very important in Kemet. Heru was sometimes depicted as a falcon. This image later became a national symbol. The right eye of Heru was associated with the sun because a falcon has keen vision, and like the sun, the symbol of the creator, it sees everything and everyone on the earth below. The resurrection of Asar was symbolized by a monolith called a Tekken. So, wherever you see a Tekken, remember that it is an African symbol representing the resurrection of Asar, an African king who died and was resurrected more than 6,000 years ago. Dozens of temples were built in Kemet, and each had a pair of Tekkenu at the entrance, one standing to the left and one to the right. The Tekken on the left represented yesterday. The one on the right symbolized tomorrow. The entrance to the temple represented today, the space which exists between yesterday and tomorrow. A pair of Tekkenu also represented the complementary and dual aspects of life, a male and female nature. 4,000 years ago, there were more than 1,200 Tekkenu in Kemet. Today, in Egypt, there are only 7. The Tekken that once stood to the right of the entrance of Luxor Temple was removed in 1833. It now stands at the Place de la Concorde in Paris, France. There is a Tekken in Central Park in New York City, one on the banks of the Thames River in London, England, and another in Istanbul, Turkey. There is a Tekken in Vatican City in the center of St. Peter's Square. There are 13 Tekkenu in Rome, many of which now stand in front of churches located throughout the city. In fact, the architectural design of the church steeple was inspired by the Tekkenu which stood in front of the temples of Kemet.
Because our oppressor knows that as long as we hitch our wagon to religion, whether it's Christianity or Islam, and I don't mean to step on people's toes, but I'm just telling you historical truth, then as long as you're praying to somebody's concept of God and not cultivating the God consciousness that dwells within you, you will always be subservient to somebody else. It's about empowering yourself with the knowledge. It's about envisioning what you have the capacity to do, acting on those visions, and then transforming your behavior, your speech, and transforming the world. That's what our oppressor is fearful of. So they'll keep us focusing on dreams. They'll keep us comfortable worshiping gods who never deliver on the prayers that we've been making. If anybody should be free from oppression, it should be us. You know, if anybody should be free in this society, it should be us. But we find ourselves suffering more today than we did 50 years ago. So we got to stop and ask ourselves the question, why is it that we have not made the progress that we thought we should have made at this time? So in that context, let me just give you an analogy. When you have a plumbing problem, your toilet doesn't work. You call a plumber, and the plumber will come and fix whatever needs to be fixed, and you'll flush the toilet, and you'll see the toilet works, and you pay that person. You have a problem with your car. You take your car to the automotive dealer. They'll analyze the problem. They'll replace your battery. They'll replace your transmission. They'll replace your brakes. You drive out, and that thing works. You have a pain in your tooth. You go to a dentist. The dentist takes an x-ray, checks out the problem, fills the cavity or whatever, and you walk out that door knowing that you got what you came to get. We've been praying to other people's gods for centuries, and we have not received what we've been praying for.